My name is Haley, and I was 15 when my mom abandoned me at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. She left me standing at the check-in counter with just $100 and a cell phone so she could jet off to Bora Bora with Nathan, her new husband of 3 months. The look of indifference in her eyes as she walked away still haunts me. I stood frozen, surrounded by travelers, completely alone and betrayed by the one person who was supposed to protect me most in this world. Before I tell you how I survived this nightmare, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever felt betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you. Growing up, we were what most people would call a normal family. My dad, Michael, worked at his small construction company while my mom, Stephanie, managed the office part-time and took care of our home in suburban Chicago. We weren't rich, but we had enough. Family dinners around our oak table, weekend bike rides along Lake Michigan, and annual road trips to Wisconsin Dells were the simple joys that made up my childhood. But looking back, I can see the warning signs I missed as a kid. Mom always seemed a little too interested in what our neighbors had that we didn't. She'd come home from her friend Diane's house talking about their new kitchen renovation or luxury SUV with this strange mixture of admiration and resentment in her voice. "We could have nice things too if your father was more ambitious," she'd mutter when she thought I couldn't hear. Dad worked hard, putting in 60-hour weeks sometimes, but his small business was always struggling to compete with larger companies. He'd come home exhausted, his hands calloused and his back aching, only to face Mom's thinly veiled disappointment. Still, they seemed to make it work, and I never imagined our family could fall apart the way it did. Everything changed when I was 12. The economic downturn hit Dad's business hard. Several big clients couldn't pay their bills, and suddenly we were the ones struggling. The arguments started small, disagreements about spending that escalated into screaming matches about money, priorities, and broken promises. Mom stopped pretending to be happy with our middle-class life and started openly resenting it. "I'm tired of counting pennies while my friends take European vacations," she'd shout. "I didn't sign up for this life of constant sacrifice." Dad would try to reason with her. "This is temporary, Steph. The business will bounce back. We just need to tighten our belts for a while." But Mom wasn't interested in temporary sacrifices. She wanted out, and 3 months later, she filed for divorce. The custody battle was ugly. Mom hired an expensive lawyer she couldn't really afford, determined to win at all costs. Dad was blindsided, emotionally devastated, and financially drained. When his business finally went under completely, he had to make the brutal decision to accept a job offer from his former college roommate in Seattle. The judge awarded Mom primary custody, with Dad getting standard visitation rights. But with him living across the country, those visits became rare and precious. We settled into a routine of weekly phone calls and video chats, but it wasn't the same. I missed him terribly, especially as Mom changed into someone I barely recognized. With the divorce finalized, Mom seemed determined to reinvent herself. Gone was the woman who made me homemade Halloween costumes and cheered at my soccer games. In her place was someone obsessed with recapturing her youth and climbing the social ladder. She joined an expensive gym, started getting cosmetic procedures she couldn't afford, and began dating a series of increasingly wealthy men. During this time, I became less of a daughter and more of an inconvenience. My academic achievements went unnoticed unless they reflected well on her parenting. My clothing choices were scrutinized and often deemed not good enough for the image she wanted to project. I learned to make myself invisible, to need nothing, to expect nothing. "Haley, couldn't you do something with your hair?" she'd say before her dates arrived. "And those jeans make you look heavy. Don't you care how you present yourself?" Each criticism chipped away at my self-esteem until I believed I was the burden she clearly thought I was. Then came Nathan. Tall, tanned, and 15 years older than Mom, he was everything she'd been looking for, primarily because of his real estate development business and the Black American Express card he flashed at every opportunity. Their first date was at an exclusive downtown restaurant. He picked her up in his Mercedes convertible, and she came home giddy like a teenager. "This is it, Haley," she said, kicking off her new designer heels. This is the life I deserve. Nathan showered her with gifts, jewelry, weekend getaways, designer clothes. He took her to charity galas and exclusive clubs where she met the type of people she'd always envied. And Mom soaked it all up like a desert plant finally getting water. For the first time since the divorce, she seemed happy. But that happiness never extended to include me. From the beginning, Nathan made it clear I wasn't part of his vision. He never outright said it, but it was in the little things, the way he'd talk about taking your mother away for the weekend or planning dinners at restaurants that were adults only. He'd acknowledge me with a nod when he came to the house but rarely engaged in actual conversation. I was the unwanted baggage that came with his new trophy girlfriend. When Nathan proposed after just 6 months of dating, Mom didn't hesitate. The wedding was exactly what you'd expect, extravagant, showy, and uncomfortable for me. I stood in an ill-fitting bridesmaid dress next to Mom's new friends, feeling like a prop in someone else's fairy tale. Dad couldn't afford to fly in for the event, so I had no one in my corner. That night, as Mom and Nathan left for their weekend honeymoon in New York, I sat alone in our house wondering where I fit in this new reality. After the wedding, we moved into Nathan's luxurious downtown condo. My new room was beautiful but sterile, like a hotel suite rather than a teenager's bedroom. I wasn't allowed to put posters on the walls or rearrange the furniture. This is Nathan's investment property, Mom explained. We need to keep it in pristine condition. The message was clear, this wasn't my home. I was just a temporary resident until they figured out what to do with me. 2 months after the wedding, Mom announced that Nathan was planning a family vacation to Hawaii. I was shocked, it was the first time either of them had included me in their plans. Really? I get to come too? I asked, unable to hide my excitement. Of course, Mom said, looking somewhat annoyed at my surprise. We're a family now, aren't we? Nathan thought it would be good for us to have some bonding time. For the first time since Dad left, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe things were going to get better. Maybe Nathan was finally accepting me. Maybe Mom remembered she was still my mother. The next few weeks were a flurry of preparation. Mom took me shopping for new swimsuits, sundresses, and sandals. We got matching sun hats and beach bags. She even helped me pick out a new digital camera so I could document our trip. It was the most attention she'd paid to me in years, and I soaked it up desperately. This is going to be amazing, she said as we packed our suitcases the night before. 10 days of pure paradise. I stayed up late, too excited to sleep, imagining snorkeling in crystal clear waters, learning to surf, maybe even seeing dolphins. Dad called to wish me a good trip, and I bubbled over with enthusiasm. I'm so happy for you, Hales, he said, though I detected a note of sadness in his voice. Take lots of pictures for me, okay? I will, I promised. I wish you could come too. Me too, kiddo. Me too. The morning of our flight, we woke up at 4 a.m. Nathan seemed tense, checking his watch repeatedly and hurrying us along. Mom was oddly quiet, avoiding eye contact as she fussed with her carry-on bag. I attributed their mood to early morning travel stress and focused on containing my own excitement. We arrived at O'Hare International Airport 3 hours before our scheduled departure. The terminal was already bustling with travelers, and I felt a flutter of nervousness. This would be my first major flight since I was too young to remember. Mom must have noticed my anxiety because she squeezed my shoulder and said, "Everything will be fine." I had no idea those would be the last kind words she'd speak to me that day. At the check-in counter, Nathan handed over their passports and pulled out 2, not 3, booking confirmations. I stood there confused as the airline employee processed their check-in. What about my ticket? I asked, looking between Mom and Nathan. There was a moment of heavy silence. Nathan looked annoyed, checking his watch again. Mom's face transformed into something cold and unfamiliar. There isn't one, she said flatly. What do you mean? I thought we were all going to Hawaii together? Mom sighed like I was being deliberately difficult. Plans changed, Haley. This is actually our honeymoon. We're going to Bora Bora, not Hawaii. The world tilted under my feet. But, what about me? Where am I supposed to go? Home, obviously, Nathan interjected, not bothering to hide his irritation. You're 15, not 5. You can take care of yourself for 2 weeks. 2 weeks? My voice cracked as panic set in. You're leaving me alone for 2 weeks? Mom reached into her purse and pulled out $100 bill, pressing it into my hand. This should be more than enough for an Uber home and food delivery until we get back. There's plenty of food in the fridge, and Mrs. Peterson next door will check on you if you need anything. My hand started shaking. You're joking, right? This is some kind of prank? Don't be so dramatic, Mom hissed, glancing around as people began to stare. Teenagers stay home alone all the time. You should be grateful for the independence. But I don't even have house keys. I was crying now, unable to process what was happening. You changed the locks last week and haven't given me the new key yet. A flash of realization crossed Mom's face, quickly replaced by annoyance. Fine. I'll have Mrs. Peterson let you in. I'll call her from the plane. That's when it hit me, this wasn't a last-minute change. They had planned this all along. The Hawaii story, the shopping trips, the packing help, it was all a calculated deception to get me to the airport without resistance. You lied to me, I whispered. You never intended to take me. Nathan checked his watch again. We need to get through security, Stephanie. Our flight boards in 40 minutes. You can't just leave me here. I grabbed Mom's arm, my voice rising with panic. Mom, please. This isn't right. People were definitely staring now. A security officer approached, asking if everything was okay. My daughter is having a tantrum because she can't come on our adults-only vacation, Mom explained smoothly. She'll be fine. She just needs to grow up a little. The security officer looked skeptical but didn't intervene directly. Ma'am, if you're planning to leave a minor unaccompanied at the airport, we need to follow certain protocols. She's not unaccompanied, Mom snapped. She's going home. She has money for transportation. She's being difficult on purpose. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman, this stranger with my mother's face, was abandoning me in a crowded airport and acting like I was the problem. Mom, please don't do this, I begged, tears streaming down my face. Whatever I did wrong, I'm sorry. Please don't leave me. For a brief moment, something flickered in her eyes, guilt, perhaps, or the faintest reminder of maternal instinct. But Nathan placed his hand on her lower back, guiding her away. We're going to miss our flight, he said firmly. Haley will be fine. She's just being manipulative. Mom hesitated for one more second, then nodded. I'll call when we land, she said over her shoulder as they walked toward security. Don't make this into a bigger deal than it is. And just like that, they were gone, swallowed by the crowd of travelers. I stood frozen by the check-in counter, $100 bill crumpled in my fist, completely alone in a sea of strangers. The airline employee who had processed their check-in looked at me with pity. Do you have someone you can call, honey? I couldn't answer. I couldn't breathe. I just turned and ran to the nearest bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and collapsed into heaving sobs as the full weight of my mother's betrayal crashed down on me. I don't know how long I stayed in that bathroom stall, crying until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen. The reality of my situation hit me in waves. I was alone, with no way to get into our house, minimal money, and no real plan. Each time I thought I had pulled myself together, another sob would tear through me. Eventually, a gentle knock on the stall door interrupted my breakdown. Honey? Are you okay in there? An older woman's voice. You've been crying for a long time. I'm fine, I managed to choke out, though it was obviously a lie. Well, I'm going to stand right here until you come out, because I don't think you're fine at all. Her kindness only made me cry harder, but somehow it also gave me the strength to unlock the door. The woman, a grandmother type with silver hair and kind eyes, took one look at my tear-streaked face and pulled me into a hug. "What happened, sweetheart?" Between hiccuping sobs, I explained my situation. Her expression grew increasingly horrified. "That's abandonment," she said firmly. "We need to find airport security right away." She walked me to the nearest security post, her arm around my shoulders like a protective shield. The officers listened to my story with professional concern, but their response was disappointing. "Since you're 15 and have money for transportation, this doesn't technically qualify as abandonment in a legal sense," one officer explained gently. "Your mother made poor judgment, but she did provide means for you to get home. Are there any other family members you can call?" My first thought was Dad, but when I tried calling, it went straight to voicemail. I remembered too late that he had mentioned taking a camping trip in Olympic National Park this weekend, likely with no cell service. I left a desperate message anyway, my voice breaking as I explained what happened. "Dad, it's me. Mom and Nathan left me at the airport. They went to Bora Bora and I'm alone at O'Hare with no house keys. Please call me back as soon as you get this. I don't know what to do." Next, I tried my best friend Emma, but her mom answered and explained they were at her grandmother's lake house with spotty reception. I was too embarrassed to fully explain what happened, so I just asked her to have Emma call me when possible. I spent the next few hours calling everyone I could think of, classmates, neighbors, even my old soccer coach, but found no immediate help. Some parents seemed hesitant to get involved in what sounded like a family dispute. Others offered sympathy but no practical assistance. The worst were those who didn't quite believe me. "Are you sure there wasn't a misunderstanding? Your mother wouldn't just leave you." But she had. And as the hours passed, the reality of my situation became increasingly dire. My phone battery was down to 40%, I was hungry but reluctant to spend my limited cash, and the airport security couldn't let me stay overnight once they determined I wasn't legally abandoned. "You need to either buy a ticket somewhere, find someone to pick you up, or we'll have to involve Child Protective Services," the officer explained apologetically. The thought of entering the foster system terrified me more than being alone. I was frantically trying to come up with a plan when a young woman in an airport employee uniform approached me. "I've seen you sitting here for hours," she said, sitting down beside me. "My name's Jessica. Want to tell me what's going on?" Something about her gentle, straightforward manner broke through my defenses. I told her everything, from the divorce to the moment Mom walked away. Jessica listened without interrupting, then said, "First things first, let's charge your phone." She plugged my nearly dead phone into her portable charger. "Have you eaten anything today?" I shook my head, and she disappeared, returning minutes later with a sandwich and bottle of water. As I ate, she laid out my options with practical clarity. "If you have no family or friends available, and no way to get into your house, you might want to consider a youth shelter for tonight. It's not ideal, but it's safe, and they can help you figure out next steps. I volunteer at one downtown, I could call ahead for you." The thought of a shelter terrified me, but my alternatives were dwindling. With Jessica's help, I researched my options and found that Chicago had several emergency shelters for teens. She helped me navigate the public transit system to save money, wrote down her number in case I needed help, and gave me a hug before I left the airport. "You're going to get through this," she said firmly. "What your mom did was wrong, but it doesn't define you. You're clearly resourceful and brave." I didn't feel brave as I boarded the Blue Line train toward downtown Chicago. I felt small and abandoned and terrified. The city had never seemed so massive and impersonal. I'd lived in the Chicago suburbs my whole life but had rarely navigated the city alone, especially not the neighborhoods away from the tourist areas. When an older man noticed me checking the transit map repeatedly with obvious confusion, he gently asked if I needed directions. My suburban instinct screamed stranger danger, but I was lost and desperate. "I'm trying to get to this address," I showed him the shelter information on my phone. His expression softened. "That's 3 blocks from my stop. I can show you where to transfer and which direction to walk." His kindness was unexpected and overwhelming. I nearly started crying again but managed to hold it together as he explained exactly which stops and streets to take. When he got off the train, he pointed me toward my next transfer and wished me luck. That small interaction, a stranger's basic decency, somehow gave me strength to keep going. The youth shelter was located in a rundown building with a small, unobtrusive sign. My heart pounded as I approached the entrance. What if they turned me away? What if it was dangerous inside? What if this was a terrible mistake? But I had nowhere else to go. So I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The intake process was intimidating, lots of questions, forms, and explanations of rules. The staff member, a tired-looking woman named Diane, took my information with professional detachment until I explained my situation. Your mother left you at the airport, she repeated, her professional facade cracking slightly. To go on vacation with her new husband? I nodded, staring at my hands. Hold on a minute, she said, disappearing into an office. She returned with a man in his 30s with kind eyes and a worn Chicago Cubs t-shirt. Haley, this is Alex. He's one of our counselors. I think he might be able to help you figure this out. Alex didn't offer empty reassurances or pity. Instead, he spoke to me with straightforward respect. This is a temporary solution, okay? We're going to help you contact your father and figure out next steps. For tonight, you need a safe place to sleep, a hot meal, and a chance to catch your breath. The shelter was basic but clean. I was assigned a small room with 2 bunk beds, which I would share with 3 other girls. The mattress was thin, the blankets scratchy, and privacy non-existent, but it was indoors and safe. My roommates filtered in later that evening. 2 barely acknowledged me, but the third, a girl with purple-tipped hair named Tara, sat on the edge of my bunk and asked matter-of-factly, "So what's your story?" When I hesitantly shared what happened, she nodded without surprise. Parents can be the worst sometimes. My mom chose her boyfriend over me too, except he was the one who didn't want me around because he was doing things to me he shouldn't. Her casual mention of what was clearly abuse made my own situation seem simultaneously better and worse. Better because I hadn't faced that kind of violation, worse because it placed my mother's betrayal in a larger context of parental failures. How do you deal with it? I asked her quietly. Tara shrugged. One day at a time. Find people who actually give a damn. Build your own family eventually. She gave me half a chocolate bar from her secret stash. First night's the hardest. It gets more bearable. That night, lying on the unfamiliar bed listening to the sounds of the shelter, distant conversations, someone crying softly in another room, sirens outside, I tried again to reach my father. Still no answer. I left another voicemail, trying to sound calmer than I felt, and sent a text explaining where I was staying. I fell asleep clutching my phone, waiting for it to vibrate with a call from Dad. It never came. The next morning, Alex helped me try to reach my father through alternative means, calling his workplace, looking up his friend's contact information, even reaching out to the park rangers at Olympic National Park to leave an urgent message. Still nothing. He's camping, I explained again, fighting back tears. He probably doesn't have service. We'll keep trying, Alex promised. In the meantime, would you be willing to join our group session this morning? It might help to talk about what you're going through. I reluctantly agreed, finding myself in a circle with 6 other teens, each with their own story of family breakdown, abandonment, or abuse. As they shared their experiences, some far worse than mine, something shifted inside me. The counselor guiding the session helped us identify feelings of shame, abandonment, and unworthiness that we all carried. What happened to each of you was not your fault, she emphasized. Children don't cause adults to make bad choices. When my turn came, I surprised myself by speaking honestly about not just this abandonment, but the years of subtle rejection leading up to it. How Mom had made me feel like an inconvenience. How I'd tried to become smaller, needier, better, anything to keep her love. I keep thinking if I had been different somehow, she wouldn't have left me, I admitted. That's your mother's failure, not yours, the counselor said firmly. No child should have to earn their parents' love and protection. Those should be unconditional. As the others nodded in understanding, I felt something crack inside me, the first fracture in the wall of hurt I'd built around my heart. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel angry rather than just heartbroken. My mother had failed me, repeatedly and deliberately. And I had done nothing to deserve it. Life at the youth shelter fell into a strange routine. Wake up at 7 a.m. Breakfast in the communal dining area. Group therapy at 10. Individual counseling sessions. Structured activities in the afternoon. Dinner at 6. Evening free time until lights out at 10. The structure was both comforting and disorienting. I'd never been surrounded by so many teenagers dealing with serious problems, addiction, abuse, homelessness. Their resilience was both inspiring and heartbreaking. Many had survived circumstances I couldn't imagine, yet still found reasons to laugh, to hope, to keep going. Tara, my purple-haired roommate, appointed herself my unofficial guide. The food's better on Thursdays when Miguel cooks, she advised. Stay away from the back stairwell, couples go there to hook up. And whatever you do, don't leave your stuff unattended. Not everyone here is honest. She introduced me to the unwritten rules of shelter life, which staff members were genuinely helpful, which ones just punched the clock, which residents were trustworthy, which ones would steal your belongings the moment you turned your back. Most people here are good kids in bad situations, she explained. But some have learned to survive by taking advantage of others. Can't really blame them, but you still need to watch your back. Despite the warnings, I found unexpected kindness in this temporary community. When I mentioned I had a math test coming up, if I ever made it back to school, a boy named Marcus offered to help me study. He'd been a straight-A student before his family lost their housing. When I woke up crying from a nightmare, my other roommate Zoe silently offered me her stuffed rabbit, the one possession she'd grabbed when fleeing her abusive home. Still, I didn't belong there. Unlike many of the others, I had a home, even if I couldn't access it. I had a father who loved me, even if I couldn't reach him. My stay was temporary. For some of them, this unstable existence was their foreseeable future. That reality hit hard during my second night, when a new girl arrived around midnight. She couldn't have been more than 13, clutching a garbage bag containing everything she owned, her eye swollen shut from what was clearly a physical altercation. As staff members gently guided her to the intake office, Tara whispered, "Stepdad, probably. That's usually who gives the black eyes." I lay awake that night thinking about my own stepfather, Nathan. He hadn't hit me, hadn't abused me in any conventional sense. He'd simply decided I wasn't worth including in his new life with Mom. And she had chosen him over me without hesitation. Was that better or worse than overt abuse? The absence of love versus the presence of hate? By my third day at the shelter, I was growing increasingly anxious about my father. Why hadn't he called back? What if something had happened to him? Alex helped me file a missing persons report with the Seattle police, who promised to check his apartment and workplace. Then, finally, as I was finishing lunch in the shelter cafeteria, my phone rang with my father's number. "Haley? Oh my God, I just got your messages. Are you okay? Where are you?" His voice was panicked, breathless. I burst into tears of relief. "Dad. I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. I know, I'm so sorry. The weather turned bad in the mountains and we had to hike out a different way than planned. We got stuck on the wrong side of the park with no service. I just got back to civilization an hour ago and saw all your messages. Tell me exactly what happened." As I explained the situation, his breathing became audibly controlled, like he was fighting to stay calm. When I told him where I was staying, he made a sound that was half sob, half growl. "A shelter? My daughter is in a shelter? I'm going to kill Stephanie. Dad, when can you come get me?" My voice sounded small, childlike. "I'm booking a flight right now. I'll be on the next plane to Chicago, I promise." Just hang tight. You're safe where you are. Yes, the people here have been really nice. Put one of the staff on the phone, please. I need to speak with them. I found Alex and handed him my phone. He spoke with my father for several minutes, explaining the shelter's protocols and promising to keep me safe until Dad arrived. When he returned my phone, he had a determined look on his face. Your father is catching a flight tonight. He should be here by tomorrow morning. In the meantime, we're going to contact a family law attorney I know. What your mother did crosses several legal lines. The knowledge that Dad was coming filled me with overwhelming relief. I hadn't realized how much tension I'd been carrying until I felt it release, leaving me lightheaded and shaky. Tara found me crying in our room and awkwardly patted my back. Happy tears or sad tears, she asked. Happy, I managed. My dad's coming tomorrow. She smiled, but I could see a flash of something in her eyes, envy, perhaps, or longing. That's cool. He sounds like one of the good ones. He is, I said, suddenly aware of my incredible luck in having at least one parent who would drop everything to help me. I just wish it hadn't taken something this extreme for me to appreciate that. That night, as we got ready for bed, Tara hesitated by my bunk. So, I guess you'll be leaving tomorrow. Yeah. Dad will be here in the morning. She nodded, fidgeting with her pillowcase. That's good. Just, don't forget about this place, okay? About the kids who don't have anyone coming for them. I won't, I promised, understanding what she was really saying. Don't forget about me. Maybe we could exchange numbers? Stay in touch? Her face brightened. Yeah, that would be cool. We exchanged contact information, and I made a silent promise to myself that this wouldn't be one of those well-intentioned connections that faded with time and distance. Tara had been my guide through one of the worst experiences of my life. That created a bond one wouldn't easily forget. As lights out approached, Alex stopped by our room. Haley, just wanted to let you know that your father called again. His flight lands at 8:37 a.m. I'll be here to help coordinate when he arrives. Thank you, I said, meaning it more deeply than those simple words could express. For everything. You've been incredibly brave, he said. Not many 15-year-olds could handle what you've been through with such maturity. I didn't feel brave or mature. I felt small and vulnerable and desperately in need of a parent who wouldn't abandon me. But maybe surviving when that need went unmet was its own kind of bravery. Sleep came easier that night, knowing Dad was on his way. For the first time since Mom had walked away at the airport, I felt a sense of safety returning. Tomorrow, Dad would arrive. Tomorrow, things would start getting better. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be alone anymore. Dad's flight landed early. I was sitting in the shelter's common room, anxiously checking my phone every few minutes, when Alex appeared in the doorway. Haley, there's someone here to see you. I looked up and there he was, my father, looking exhausted and rumpled from the overnight flight, his eyes red-rimmed and worried. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then I was running across the room and into his arms, sobbing like I was 5 years old again. I'm here, Hales. I'm here. I've got you, he kept repeating, his voice breaking as he held me tight. I don't know how long we stood there, clinging to each other. Eventually, Alex gently suggested we move to the private family room where we could talk. Dad kept his arm around me as we walked, like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. I'm so sorry, he said once we were seated. I should never have gone camping without cell service. I should have been there for you. It's not your fault, I insisted. You didn't know Mom would. I couldn't finish the sentence. Dad's expression darkened. No, I didn't. But I should have fought harder for custody. I knew she was becoming increasingly self-centered, but I never imagined she'd abandon you like this. Alex joined us with a woman in a crisp pantsuit who introduced herself as Karen Donovan, a family law attorney. Alex called me last night, she explained. What your mother did constitutes child endangerment and abandonment under Illinois law. We need to document everything while it's fresh, and then discuss your options. For the next hour, I recounted every detail: the Hawaii deception, Mom's cold dismissal at the airport, the $100 she'd given me, and her failure to ensure I had access to our home. Karen took meticulous notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Dad grew increasingly pale and angry as the story unfolded. "I want full custody," he said when I finished. "Stephanie has forfeited any right to be Haley's parent." Karen nodded. "We have grounds for an emergency custody modification. We'll file today. I also recommend we contact the police to file a report for child endangerment." "Will Mom get in trouble?" I asked, feeling a confusing mix of emotions, anger at her betrayal, but also a lingering instinct to protect her. "That will be up to the prosecutor," Karen explained gently. "But documenting this incident is important for your custody case, regardless of whether criminal charges are pursued." Dad squeezed my hand. "What do you want, Haley? This is about protecting you, not punishing your mother." I thought about it, about the fear and humiliation I'd felt standing alone at that airport, about the nights in the shelter while Mom and Nathan enjoyed luxury in Bora Bora. "I want to live with you," I said firmly. "I don't want to go back to her." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Karen made phone calls and filed emergency motions while Dad and I went to the police station to file a report. The officers were professional but clearly disturbed by my story. One of them, a woman with daughters of her own, kept shaking her head in disbelief. "We'll need to question your mother when she returns," the officer explained. "Do you know when that will be?" "They're supposed to be gone for 2 weeks," I said. "So another 11 days, I think." "And you had no way to access your home?" "No spare key?" "No. They changed the locks last week because Nathan thought the building wasn't secure enough. Mom never gave me the new key." Each detail seemed to strengthen the case against her. By afternoon, Karen had secured an emergency hearing with a family court judge for the following morning and arranged for a police escort to Mom's condo. "We need to collect Haley's essential belongings," she explained. "Since you don't have a key, the police can authorize the building manager to let you in." As we drove to the downtown condo, Dad tried to prepare me. "Your mother might have left for her trip without tidying up. Try not to read too much into whatever state the place is in." But nothing could have prepared me for what we found. When the building manager reluctantly unlocked the door under the watchful eyes of 2 police officers, we entered a condo that had been meticulously prepared for a long absence: mail stopped, plants moved to a neighbor's, refrigerator cleaned out. What we didn't find were any signs that a 15-year-old girl lived there. My room had been transformed into a home office, my belongings packed into boxes stacked in the corner. My clothes still hung in the closet, but my desk was gone, replaced by a sleek workstation with Nathan's business logo on the computer screen. "They were planning to get rid of me," I whispered, taking in the systematic erasure of my existence. This wasn't a last-minute decision. Dad put his arm around me, his body tense with anger. "Let's get your things and get out of here." As I packed clothes and personal items, one of the officers called us to the master bedroom. "You might want to see this," she said, pointing to travel documents spread across the dresser. Among them were brochures for boarding schools in Switzerland and New England, with notes in my mother's handwriting comparing costs and distance. There was also a printed email exchange between Mom and Nathan discussing the Haley situation and the need for a more permanent solution before the school year. They were going to send me away, I realized, feeling sick. They were planning it all along. The officer took photos of the documents as evidence while Dad helped me finish packing. We took everything that mattered to me: clothes, books, my laptop, photo albums, the quilt my grandmother had made before she died. It felt like we were rescuing these pieces of my identity from being discarded. As we were leaving, I noticed Mom's social media accounts were still logged in on the living room tablet. Curiosity compelled me to look. What I found was like a knife to my already wounded heart: dozens of photos of Mom and Nathan enjoying their romantic getaway in Bora Bora. Mom lounging on pristine beaches, sipping champagne at sunset, snorkeling in crystal waters, living her best life while I slept in a homeless shelter. Not once in any post did she mention having a daughter, let alone one she'd abandoned at an airport. Her social media presence was carefully curated to present the image of a carefree, childless couple living a glamorous life. I had been literally erased from her narrative. I handed the tablet silently to Dad, who looked at it and then to the police officers. "Can you document this too? She's presenting a completely false reality." The female officer nodded grimly. Social media evidence can be very compelling in family court. By evening, news of my situation had somehow leaked to local media. Karen called to warn us that a reporter from the Chicago Tribune was asking for comment on a story about a local teen abandoned at O'Hare by her mother and stepfather. "You don't have to speak to anyone," she assured us. "But it might be worth considering. Public pressure could work in our favor with the custody case." Dad left the decision to me. After careful thought, I agreed to a brief interview with the stipulation that they not use my last name or show my face clearly. The reporter, a compassionate woman named Jill, listened attentively as I told my story. Her questions were respectful, focusing on the facts rather than trying to sensationalize my pain. When she asked how I was coping, I found myself thinking of Tara and the other teens at the shelter. "I was lucky," I said. "I had a shelter to go to and a father who came for me as soon as he could. But I met kids there who don't have anyone coming for them. They're the ones who need help and attention, not me." The story ran the next morning, just before our court hearing. The headline was restrained but powerful: "Teen left at airport while mother vacations in Bora Bora." The article included statements from child welfare experts and a photo of the shelter where I'd stayed, with a note that donations had increased after staff mentioned my story to regular supporters. By the time we arrived at the courthouse, the article had been shared thousands of times. People I didn't know were expressing outrage on social media. Mom's carefully curated Instagram was flooded with negative comments. Her employer, a real estate firm where she worked as an office manager, issued a statement that they were investigating the situation. In less than 24 hours, my private family trauma had become a public referendum on parental responsibility. It was overwhelming and uncomfortable, but also strangely validating. Complete strangers were confirming what I needed to hear, that what happened to me was wrong, inexcusable, and not my fault. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, had clearly read the news coverage. But she focused strictly on the legal evidence: the police report, the documentation of the converted bedroom, the travel documents indicating plans to send me away, and statements from the shelter staff. "Based on the evidence presented, I am granting the emergency modification of custody to Michael Stevens with immediate effect," she announced. Stephanie Mills Winters will have no visitation rights pending a full hearing after her return. The court will also issue a temporary restraining order preventing Mrs. Mills Winters from removing the minor child from the state of Illinois until custody is permanently determined. It was a complete victory, but I felt hollow rather than triumphant. The legal system had confirmed what my heart already knew: my mother had failed me so profoundly that she was no longer deemed fit to be my parent. As we left the courthouse, Dad squeezed my shoulder. "This is just the beginning of the process, Haley. We have a lot to figure out still." "Like what?" I asked, emotionally exhausted. "Like whether you want to stay in Chicago to finish the school year or come to Seattle with me right away. Like whether you want to try to maintain any relationship with your mother going forward. Like how we're going to heal from this." I leaned against him, grateful for his steady presence. "Can we figure it out together? One step at a time?" "Absolutely," he promised. "We're a team now. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." For the first time since Mom had walked away at the airport, I felt something like hope stirring in my chest. Dad and I were staying at a hotel downtown while we sorted out next steps. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone lit up with a text from Tara: "Saw you on the news. Proud of you for speaking up. Don't forget the little people now that you're famous, winky face." I smiled and texted back, "Never. How's everyone there?" Same old drama. New girl moved into your bunk. She's not as cool as you. A lump formed in my throat. In just 3 days, I'd formed connections at the shelter that felt significant and real. I miss you guys. We miss you too. But we're glad you got your happy ending. Was it a happy ending? It didn't feel that way yet. More like the painful beginning of a new chapter. But as I lay in the clean hotel bed, with Dad safely in the connecting room, I recognized that I was infinitely luckier than many of the kids I'd met at the shelter. I had a parent who came for me. I had options and resources. I had a future that wasn't defined by abandonment. That night, I made a promise to myself: once I got through this, once my life stabilized, I would find ways to help kids like Tara, the ones nobody was coming to rescue. 11 days after being abandoned at O'Hare, I was sitting in Karen's office when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom: "Just landed. Where are you? Why aren't you answering my calls? The house looks like it's been robbed." Dad and Karen exchanged glances. "You don't have to respond," Karen reminded me. "The court order specifies no contact unless you initiate it." "I want to," I said, surprising myself. "Not to fight, but I need to say some things." With their support, I crafted a brief, factual response: "I'm safe with Dad. There's a court order giving him emergency custody. Your lawyer can contact Karen Donovan at this number." Mom's response was immediate and explosive: a series of texts demanding I come home, accusing Dad of kidnapping me, and threatening legal action. I silenced my phone and handed it to Karen, who documented the messages as evidence of Mom's volatility. "She doesn't even acknowledge what she did," I said, fighting back tears. "It's like she expected me to just wait at home like a pet until she decided to come back." "Narcissists rarely take responsibility for their actions," Karen explained gently. "In her mind, she's the victim here." The next day brought a flurry of legal maneuvers. Mom hired an expensive attorney who filed emergency motions claiming Dad had manipulated me and turned me against her. The judge, unimpressed, maintained the temporary custody order and scheduled a full hearing for the following week. Meanwhile, the police investigation continued. Detective Reynolds, the female officer who had escorted us to the condo, called to inform us that they were recommending charges of child endangerment against both Mom and Nathan. "The district attorney will make the final decision," she explained, "but the evidence is compelling. Abandoning a minor without access to secure shelter crosses the line from poor judgment into criminal neglect." That afternoon, as Dad and I were having lunch at a small cafe near our hotel, my phone lit up with Mom's name and photo. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Where are you?" she demanded, without greeting. "We need to talk in person. This ridiculous situation has gone far enough." "I'm not telling you where I am," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "There's a restraining order." "A restraining order? Against your own mother? What has your father been telling you? You know I would never hurt you. You abandoned me at an airport with $100 and no place to go," I said, the words catching in my throat. "I spent 3 nights in a homeless shelter." There was a brief silence. "Don't be so dramatic, Haley. I left you money for an Uber. You chose to make it into a federal case instead of just going home like a normal teenager." Her dismissive tone ignited something in me, a righteous anger that burned away my lingering hurt. "How was I supposed to get into the house? You changed the locks and never gave me a key. Mrs. Peterson has a spare." Mrs. Peterson was in Florida visiting her daughter. I tried calling her. "Did you even check before you left me?" Another pause. "Nathan said he talked to her." "Well, he lied. Just like you both lied about taking me to Hawaii." Mom's voice turned wheedling. "Sweetheart, we can work this out. Come home and we'll talk about it. Nathan feels terrible about the misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding? You converted my bedroom into an office before you even left. You were researching boarding schools to send me away permanently." "That wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a plan." Who told you? That's not, we were just exploring options for your education. The best schools. Stop lying. My voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. Dad placed a supportive hand on my arm but didn't interrupt. You didn't want me anymore. Just admit it. That's not true. You're my daughter. I love you. The words sounded hollow, rehearsed. If you loved me, you wouldn't have left me at an airport. You wouldn't have erased me from your social media. You wouldn't have made me feel like an inconvenience my entire life. Mom's voice hardened. I see your father has thoroughly poisoned you against me. Fine. We'll let the courts sort this out. But don't think you're going to live in Seattle with him. This is just a temporary drama you've created for attention. Goodbye, Mom, I said quietly, and ended the call. Dad looked at me with concern. You okay? I nodded slowly. Actually, yes. For the first time in a long time, I think I am. That conversation marked a turning point. I had spoken my truth and stood my ground. Mom had shown her true colors, confirming what I needed to know. Her concern was for appearances and control, not for my well-being. The next few days brought more drama. Mom showed up at the youth shelter, demanding information about me and creating such a scene that staff had to call the police. She was escorted from the property and warned about violating the restraining order. Nathan, meanwhile, had distanced himself from the situation entirely. According to gossip relayed by my former neighbors, he had moved into a hotel, leaving Mom to deal with the legal and public relations fallout alone. His real estate business was suffering as clients backed away from the negative publicity. Mom's employer had placed her on unpaid leave pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. The full custody hearing was a grueling experience. Mom arrived looking polished and maternal in a conservative dress, a stark contrast to her usual stylish attire. Her attorney portrayed her as a loving mother who had made one regrettable error in judgment, now being unfairly criminalized by a vindictive ex-husband. Then Karen presented our evidence, not just the abandonment itself, but the pattern of neglect and emotional rejection leading up to it. She showed the judge photos of my converted bedroom, the boarding school research, and Mom's social media posts from Bora Bora. Most damaging was the testimony from shelter staff and the detective who had investigated the case. Alex described my emotional state upon arrival, terrified, humiliated, and clearly blindsided by my mother's actions. Detective Reynolds detailed the evidence of premeditation they had uncovered, including emails between Mom and Nathan discussing their child-free future dating back months before the incident. When it was my turn to speak, I felt surprisingly calm. I had prepared what I wanted to say, focusing on facts rather than emotions. My mother told me we were going on a family vacation to Hawaii. She helped me shop for new clothes and pack my suitcase. Then, at the airport, she informed me I wasn't going with them, gave me $100, and left for Bora Bora. She did not ensure I had safe shelter. She did not make sure I had access to our home. When I called for help, she didn't answer. She enjoyed her vacation and posted about it online, never once mentioning she had a daughter, let alone one she had abandoned. The judge asked if I wanted to maintain any relationship with my mother. I took a deep breath. I don't know yet. I think I need time and probably therapy to figure that out. Right now, I just want to feel safe and wanted. I feel that with my dad. Mom broke down during her testimony, crying what seemed like genuine tears as she claimed she had thought Mrs. Peterson would help me, that Nathan had assured her everything was arranged, that she had been manipulated by her new husband just as Dad was now manipulating me. I've made mistakes, she admitted tearfully. But I love my daughter. Please don't take her away from me. For a moment, watching her cry, I felt a flicker of doubt. Was there some truth to her claims? Had Nathan been the mastermind behind my exclusion? But then I remembered years of subtle rejection before he ever entered the picture. I remembered her cold eyes as she walked away at the airport. I remembered how she had recreated her life without me on social media. The judge was not swayed by the tears. Her ruling was decisive, full custody awarded to my father, with Mom granted only supervised visitation after completing parenting classes and psychological evaluation. Child support was set at a substantial amount, given the difference in our parents' incomes. The restraining order would remain in place until the criminal case was resolved. As the judge delivered her ruling, I watched Mom's face transform, the maternal concern replaced by cold fury. She glared at me across the courtroom, and in that unguarded moment, I saw the truth I had been avoiding for years. She saw me as property, not a person. An accessory to be displayed or discarded according to her needs. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. Dad shielded me from their questions, guiding me quickly to a waiting car. As we pulled away, I glanced back to see Mom emerging, her attorney attempting to block the cameras as she rushed to her own vehicle, head down. "It's over," Dad said quietly. "You're coming home with me." But it wasn't quite over. 2 days later, as we were finalizing arrangements for my move to Seattle, the district attorney's office announced they were filing criminal charges against both Mom and Nathan for child endangerment. If convicted, they could face fines and probation, though jail time was unlikely for first-time offenders. Mom's response to the charges was to show up at the hotel where Dad and I were staying. How she found us, I'll never know. The hotel security called to warn us she was in the lobby, demanding to see me. "You don't have to talk to her," Dad assured me. "We can have security escort her out." But something in me needed this final confrontation, not for her, but for me. "I want to see her. But in public, in the lobby." "And you'll be there too?" "Right by your side," he promised. Mom was pacing by the reception desk when we came down, her normally perfect appearance disheveled, her eyes red from crying or lack of sleep. When she saw me, she rushed forward, only to stop abruptly when a security guard stepped between us. 5 minutes, the guard said firmly. "And you maintain distance." We sat in a corner of the lobby, Dad beside me, the guard watching nearby. Mom immediately launched into a convoluted explanation about how Nathan had manipulated her, how she'd been under tremendous stress, how this was all a terrible misunderstanding. I let her talk herself out. Then, when she finally paused for breath, I said the words I had rehearsed, "I forgive you." She blinked in surprise. "You, what?" "I forgive you," I repeated. "Not because you deserve it or because what you did was okay. It wasn't. It was cruel and selfish and illegal. I forgive you because holding on to this anger hurts me more than it hurts you. And I'm done being hurt by you. Haley, please. I'm moving to Seattle with Dad. I'm going to therapy to deal with the damage you've caused. Maybe someday we can have some kind of relationship, but it will be on my terms, not yours. And it will start with you taking actual responsibility for your choices, not blaming Nathan or Dad or stress or me." Mom's face hardened. "You think you have all the answers at 15? You have no idea what it's like to be trapped in a life that's suffocating you. To finally find happiness only to have your ungrateful child try to ruin it." And there it was, the ugly truth she had been hiding behind tears and excuses. Dad started to intervene, but I placed my hand on his arm. "Thank you," I said to Mom. "For what?" she asked suspiciously. "For finally being honest. For confirming that I'm making the right choice." I stood up. "Goodbye, Mom. I hope you get the help you need." As we walked away, she called after me, her voice breaking, "You can't just leave me." The irony of her words hung in the air as we entered the elevator. Dad pulled me into a hug as the doors closed on my mother's desperate face. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "So damn proud." That night, as I packed the last of my belongings for our flight to Seattle the next day, I felt lighter somehow. The confrontation had provided a kind of closure I hadn't known I needed. Mom had shown her true self, without pretense or manipulation, and in doing so had freed me from any lingering doubt or guilt. I was ready to begin again. The transition to Seattle wasn't easy. Dad's apartment was small, a one-bedroom he had hastily converted to accommodate me by moving his bed into the living room and giving me the bedroom. The city was unfamiliar, perpetually damp, and filled with steep hills that made my daily walks to school a cardio workout. The kids at my new high school had their established friend groups, their inside jokes, their shared history that excluded me. But for all its challenges, Seattle offered something Chicago couldn't: a fresh start. Dad and I developed new routines. Sunday morning hikes in the nearby mountains. Wednesday night cooking experiments, often disasters that ended with takeout. Movie marathons on rainy weekends, which, in Seattle, meant most weekends. We talked more honestly than we ever had before, about everything from the divorce to his struggles building a new life after his business failed to my feelings of abandonment long before the airport incident. "I should have fought harder for custody," he said one night as we sat on our small balcony watching the city lights. "I knew your mother was becoming more selfish, more focused on status. But I never imagined she'd go this far." "It's not your fault," I assured him. "You couldn't have known. Still, I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me." "But you came as soon as you could," I reminded him. "That's what matters." We both started therapy, individual sessions and occasional family counseling together. My therapist, Dr. Chen, helped me understand that my mother's behavior reflected her own deep insecurities and emotional limitations, not my worth as a person or a daughter. "Some people aren't capable of the kind of selfless love that parenting requires," Dr. Chen explained. "It doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means she's limited in her capacity to love." Healing wasn't linear. I had nightmares about being abandoned in strange places. I struggled with trust issues and a persistent fear that Dad might someday decide I was too much trouble too. There were days when anger consumed me and days when grief overwhelmed me. But slowly, incrementally, I began to rebuild my sense of security and self-worth. The legal aftermath continued to unfold at a distance. Mom accepted a plea deal on the child endangerment charges, probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. Nathan, ever the opportunist, filed for divorce shortly after, citing irreconcilable differences and managing to distance himself from the negative publicity. According to my former neighbor Mrs. Wilson, who still sent occasional updates, Mom had sold the downtown condo and moved to a smaller apartment, her social climbing ambitions temporarily derailed by the scandal. 6 months after the airport incident, Mom sent me a letter, the first direct communication since our confrontation at the hotel. It arrived in a pale blue envelope with my name written in her familiar elegant handwriting. Dad handed it to me without comment, respecting my right to decide whether to open it. I carried it around for 3 days before finally sitting on the bench in our favorite park and breaking the seal. "Dear Haley," she had written. "I've been in therapy for 4 months now. My counselor suggested I write to you as part of my recovery, but I want you to know this isn't just an assignment. I think about you every day. I've been diagnosed with narcissistic personality traits, not the full disorder," my therapist is careful to emphasize. "Learning about this condition has helped me understand some of my behaviors, though understanding isn't the same as excusing. The truth is hard to face, but I'm trying. I was a mother who often put her own needs above her child's. I made choices that hurt you deeply. The airport was the most extreme example, but I see now there were thousands of small moments where I failed you. I won't ask for forgiveness. I haven't earned it. I won't ask to be part of your life again. That's your decision to make when and if you're ever ready. I just want you to know that I am facing the truth about myself and trying to become someone better. Whatever you decide about our future relationship, please know that you deserved better than the mother I was. That failure was mine, not yours. You are an extraordinary young woman, and I hope someday to have the privilege of knowing the person you become. With love and regret, Mom." I read the letter 3 times, searching for the manipulative subtext, the subtle guilt trip, the self-serving narrative. But it seemed genuine. Imperfect, still somewhat self-focused, but genuine in its acknowledgement of harm and absence of demands. That evening, I showed the letter to Dad. He read it carefully, his expression thoughtful. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think people can change if they really want to," he said slowly. But that change takes time and consistent effort. This letter might be a first step, or it might be another performance. Only time will tell. Should I respond? That's entirely up to you, Hales. There's no right answer here. You can respond now, later, or never. You can set whatever boundaries you need. After considerable thought and discussion with Dr. Chen, I decided to send a brief email acknowledgement, not quite a door opened, but a window unlatched. Thank you for your letter, I wrote. I'm not ready for regular communication yet, but I appreciate your honesty and the work you're doing in therapy. I'm doing well in Seattle. Dad and I are building a good life here. I'm getting help too, working through the hurt and learning to trust again. Maybe someday we can try to build something new, but for now, I need this distance. I wish you well with your continued recovery. By the 1-year anniversary of the airport abandonment, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. I had made real friends at school, not a large circle, but a few genuine connections. My grades had recovered from the initial disruption, and I was even considering college options with Dad's enthusiastic support. We had moved to a larger apartment with 2 proper bedrooms and a view of Puget Sound. Mom and I had established a cautious, limited communication, occasional emails, a monthly phone call that Dad still supervised from a distance. She seemed to be making genuine efforts in therapy, though there were still moments when her old patterns emerged, subtle guilt trips, focus on her own suffering, implied expectations. But she caught herself more often than not, apologizing and redirecting. When she tentatively asked if she could visit Seattle, I surprised myself by considering it. After discussing it with Dad and Dr. Chen, I agreed to a short, structured visit, dinner at a restaurant, not our home, Dad present throughout, clear time boundaries established in advance. The reunion was awkward, emotional, and ultimately constructive. Mom seemed smaller somehow, humbled by the consequences of her actions. She had brought photo albums from my childhood, perhaps as a peace offering, and we looked through them together, remembering moments when things had been better between us. I was so young when I had you, she said at one point. 22. I had no idea what I was doing, and my own mother wasn't exactly a healthy role model. She paused, seeming to catch herself. But that's not an excuse. Just context. As we parted after dinner, she hugged me briefly, respecting the physical boundaries I had established. Thank you for giving me this chance, she said quietly. I know I haven't earned it. Everyone deserves the opportunity to change, I replied, echoing Dr. Chen's words. Just don't expect miracles overnight. Back at our apartment, Dad asked how I felt about the meeting. I considered the question carefully. Okay, I think. Not great, not terrible. She's trying. Whether she can sustain it long-term remains to be seen. That's a very mature perspective, he noted. I shrugged. Forced maturity. Not sure I had much choice. I'm sorry for that, he said. You deserved a normal teenage life. Maybe. But this is the one I got. And honestly, Dad? Despite everything, I'm okay. More than okay. I'm stronger than I knew I could be. That night, lying in bed, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From abandoned teen to survivor to someone actively reclaiming her life. The path had been painful, the wounds deep and still healing. But I had discovered reservoirs of resilience I never knew I possessed. Being abandoned by my mother had broken my heart but ultimately freed me from the cycle of seeking approval I could never earn. The homeless shelter had opened my eyes to others' struggles and sparked a commitment to volunteer work I now did weekly. The court case had taught me to stand up for myself, to set boundaries, to demand the respect I deserved. The trauma remained part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I was Haley Stevens, student, daughter, friend, volunteer, survivor. The airport abandonment was something that happened to me, not who I was. As I drifted toward sleep, I thought about Tara from the shelter, with whom I still exchanged regular texts. She had recently moved in with her aunt in Milwaukee, a tentative step toward stability. How do you do it? She had asked in our last conversation. How do you not let what happened mess you up forever? I had thought carefully before responding. I guess I decided that my mother's worst day doesn't get to be the defining moment of my life. I can acknowledge the hurt without letting it control my future. Some days that's easier than others. That remained true. Some days the hurt and anger still overwhelmed me. Some days I still questioned my worth, still flinched at perceived rejection, still waited for the other shoe to drop. But those days grew fewer as time passed, as new experiences and relationships created layers of joy and connection over the painful core. Being abandoned taught me I'm stronger than I ever knew. Sometimes the people who should love us the most let us down in unimaginable ways, but that doesn't determine our worth or our future. I'm not just surviving now, I'm thriving. And if you're watching this because you've experienced something similar, know that you can thrive too. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone let you down? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. Remember, your worst day doesn't have to define your whole life. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength on your own journey of healing.